This nugget represents a brand new idea I had that I'm going to call the Living AWS Glossary. Here's the idea. AWS introduces all kinds of new technology, and with that comes new terms. One of the big hurdles to overcome as you're testing on a certification exam is just remembering what all these things are. And so I thought, well, maybe I should recommend in the exam prep section to have people go, look at the glossary of AWS terms. But it's kind of, I was like, boring. Who wants to do that? Who would do that? I mean, it's like studying for a spelling bee, and I'm like, dude, just read the dictionary and you're good. You're good. You got it. So anyway, what I thought I'd put together is a nugget that's just kind of my take on the key terms to remember, not just what they are, but kind of an explanation around them in an easy to understand format so that you can quickly recall them during the exam and, of course, in the real world. You ready? Here we go. Pages full of text, elastic cache. I don't know where my doodles are going to fit. This caches common database queries or read requests, not writing to the database, in memory rather than disk for ninja fast access. So take an example of this might be Netflix, right? Millions of people around the world use Netflix to stream movies to their house. Well, when people access Netflix, what do they want to see? The new movies. I'm sure Netflix gets hundreds of thousands, if not more, requests a day for give me the new movie titles that exist. Well, if you keep that all in the database, that's going to hit the database every single time and bog the thing down. So why not just cache that in memory? Very first time it comes from the database disk, throw it into a memory cache, and then from there on out, people hit new movies, bam, straight out of memory. It's right there listed for them. Whereas if they're looking for the old 1970s movies that start with the letter A, okay, that might be something you want to keep on the disk and not in cache, right? That's what Elastic Cache is. Differentiate that from CloudFront. CloudFront caches HTTP, HTTPS, and real-time messaging protocol, I think is what that stands for. Streams audio, streams video, those kind of things at AWS sites around the world. Allows for localized delivery of content, right? So you set up your instances in, let's just say, California or Oregon or wherever you've got your EC2 instances running from that are your websites. Well, that's a pain if you have to go around to every region around the world and spin up some EC2 instances, right? And it's also cost prohibitive, and how do you keep them all in sync? There's just a huge design to do something like that. So instead, you can use CloudFront to say, I'm going to host all of my instances, put a bunch of them in there for redundancy, out of California, but the very first time somebody in Ireland, let's just say, accesses my website, it's going to cache that content in the Ireland region specifically. So the next person in Ireland that goes there, Ireland, I don't know why that accent's coming out, that goes there, they'll be able to get the content locally rather than coming through satellite connections around the world to stream it out of California, right? That's CloudFront. Cool thing about CloudFront is you don't even have to use EC2. This is content delivery mechanism. So you can have your own web server running in your own data center and integrate it into CloudFront. You essentially put AWS in front of that. So all the people come to AWS. AWS gets the content from your web server and caches it all around the world. Amazon.com uses the same thing for their own site. Direct Connect. Direct Connect allows you to have a directly attached data center, or should I say partner or pay or something, a directly attached data center that is plugged into an AWS region over high-speed fiber optic access. So cool thing about this is you can either, one, drive out here in your little vehicle. I don't know why I felt inspired to draw that strange van. Drive out here in your little vehicle, drop equipment in here that you can now integrate right into all of your EC2 instances or integrate it into your VPC. So, I mean, think about it this way, right? Storage at AWS in S3 can add up. I mean, it's ultra durable, it's replicated all over the place, and you're like, I've got 23 terabytes of stuff that I don't even need the durability for this stuff. It's just content that we have elsewhere. What do I do? Well, why not just, instead of paying gobs and gobs and gobs to S3 for all this content, why not just lease a little rack space in one of these attached data centers, drive out a little NAS device or SAN equipment or something that you can get 23 terabytes on, or whatever absurd amount I threw out there, and you pay for one time. You don't have to pay monthly, and you run your own backups, or you don't even care about that. You know what I mean, right? So you can go put it in there. Other cool thing about Direct Connect is once you get this data center, it allows you to connect your facilities directly into that for private, as in non-IPsec VPN based access to AWS. So that can give you a lower latency connection. It can give you guaranteed access. I mean, let's just say you want to run voice over IP. You know where I'm going out of this, right? For all of your businesses out of AWS, well, over the internet, it's not guaranteed. There's no quality of service. But if you do a private line in, you could have a higher level of guarantee using Direct Connects. That's what that's there for. Security Token Service, STS. STS gives temporary credentials to AWS services, so you can actually integrate AWS with all kinds of things. You guys know about IAM, right? If not, I think it's later on in this glossary. Identity and access management feature in AWS that allows you to create user accounts. Well, they limit that thing to 5,000 user accounts, which seems like insane amounts, but again, go back to Netflix. Netflix has more than 5,000 users. Any website that really gets a lot of traction. I just read Slack.com. Went from 0 to $1 billion organization in 1 year. 1 year. They did that. And so they have hundreds of thousands of users. It's not designed to be stored in IAM. So you get your own LDAP database, right? That you run in Active Directory or Free Radius if you're on the Linux side. Or maybe you want to integrate into Twitter, or you want to integrate into Facebook sign-ins or Amazon sign-in security token service. That's your way to do it. That's your way of integrating authentication of your site with other things. Cognito is designed to provide session state and user data storage across user devices. Usually, you have to do a lot of back-end engineering and cookie storing, and I'm not a developer, so stuff, a lot of stuff in the back-end to create a service that maintains state from your iPad to your iPhone. Let's just say you've got a game or something that you're playing where you got to level 9 on your iPhone. Well, you want to be able to go to your iPad and start from level 9 and continue on. That's what Cognito is all about, is saving that session state as a service rather than you having to engineer it yourself. Trusted Advisor. Last one on this slide. Trusted Advisor is a system that automates an audit of your system on 4 major areas: cost, performance, security, and fault tolerant. Free, I think it gives you like 7 major areas that you are able to look at if you kind of total them all up to say, oh man, you forgot that this was running over there, or these are security areas. You didn't add multi-factor authentication to your root account. I mean, it does just kind of basic audits. So if you pay for Trusted Advisor, which means you've paid for a support package with AWS, you actually get a whole bunch more, which can tell you about those resources that you forgot running somewhere in the cloud that are chalking up your monthly bill and you don't know are there anymore. Relational Database Service, RDS. Just think of it as database as a service, to where Amazon gives you MySQL, Microsoft SQL, Oracle, Postgres, Aura. That's their own little cocktail, kind of like a MySQL on steroids, as a service. They take care of the redundancy. They take care of the backups. They take care of the maintenance, the patching, the outage windows. All of that is taken care of, and essentially you just get an interface into a database instance that you use all your normal database tools to manage, to write to. Essentially, databases made easy is what RDS is all about. Elastic Load Balancer, or ELB, allows you to have load balancing or high availability of EC2 resources. I would say this is one of the MVP items of AWS. It's essentially a device that Amazon will never tell you what it is, that allows you to take incoming requests and send them to multiple internal resources. Most of the time, these are EC2 servers that are running. This can give you a level of redundancy because it can do health checks on each one of those servers, and it can also give you a level of load balancing. So it sends one request here, one here, or whatever algorithm you choose to use, ELB can do it. CloudWatch is monitoring for all your AWS resources. Somewhat rudimentary in terms of monitoring. I've seen a lot of monitoring services, and I would say CloudWatch is right there in them. It's not like oh, that is awesome, but it does what it does. It can alert you if something goes bad. Identity and Access Management, IAM, that's what I was just mentioning on the previous slide. This is essentially your users, groups, and roles management for AWS. Users pretty straightforward. Groups is grouping their permissions together. What is the roles? That should be another little term in here. Roles is essentially permissions that you apply to typically an AWS resource like an EC2 instance. Instead of going onto a server and embedding user credentials that it can use to authenticate to like an RDS database or some other resources, S3 buckets, whatever, you just say, you know what, I'm going to create a role and assign that role to the EC2 instance. So as long as it's this machine, which is easily identifiable, of course, by AWS, it can automatically gain those permissions. So maybe you've got some server here that's able to write to a database, not because you embedded user credentials, but just because it is that server, right? Route 53, highly available distributed DNS with advanced features. So this is essentially hosted DNS, so I can have jeremy.cbtnuggets.com point to as an A record, some IP address. But with advanced features and distributed, these are two big deal features about Route 53. Distributed meaning it's around the world. One of the slowdowns of web access, like you go to somebody's site and it kind of hangs there, it may not necessarily be the server. It may be waiting for a DNS response because it has to look it up at a single server, maybe across the world. Instead, Route 53 distributes your DNS to all the Amazon DNS servers around the world, which gives you super fast response time, but also supports things like pointing directly to an AWS resource. So instead of creating an A record which points to an IP address that could change and cause a break in your system, you can actually create an A record and address record that points directly to the EC2 instance, right? Instead of worrying about its IP address. It also supports things like health checks. So you can have, let's just say, www.cbtnuggets.com pointing to 5 different servers, and it's constantly making sure those servers are up, has good response time and all that. And if anyone ever doesn't, it can actually remove it from the group, kind of like an elastic load balancer, but it does so from a DNS basis. Auto-scaling, last one here. Auto-scaling is the ability to add or remove EC2 instances to an auto-scaling group based on criteria. That could be maybe you have a group of 3, and one of those, the health check fails, it's gone down. You can actually terminate that instance, add another instance that's bootstrapped. Ooh, that'd be a good term. I didn't add that one. Bootstrapped meaning it builds itself. It runs through some kind of scripting to automatically add itself back into this. And now you bring your group from 2 back up to 3. Or you could do it, when you reach 70% CPU utilization average across the farm. Let's add 3 more servers. I mean, there's all kinds of criteria. That's why I just left it bland. But you can grow those out or shrink them based on those criteria. Now we're into the VPC terms, Virtual Private Cloud. I just realized I don't have Virtual Private Cloud in my list, but you should already know what that is. VPC is essentially the alternative to EC2 Classic. EC2 Classic being completely Amazon-controlled networking, where your machines get an address from the 10 network space. You can't really subnet it or divide it into different networks. It just is what it is. Amazon says that's fine if you want to test AWS out. Maybe you're just doing a little trial and see if it works for you, right? But they say anytime you want to get real with it, you want to go with VPC, where you can come in and define your different subnets. Essentially in the cloud, you can put your different instances, define rules between those subnets. That's what VPC is all about. The Internet Gateway, or IGW, is essentially your way out of that system. So you've got all these little subnets which you can talk into between your instances all day inside of there. But when you want to get out to the internet to either deliver things to the outside world or maybe download updates to your servers, that's what you need an Internet Gateway for. The Internet Gateway itself is redundant. You don't have to worry about adding a whole bunch of Internet Gateways just in case, right? Because it all relies on the Internet connectivity of the data center as a whole. So that device is not one you have to worry about in terms of redundancy. Network Access Control List, or NACL, provides firewall protection for the VPC. So this is I thought of another term that I just missed. This is an alternative to security groups. Security groups applies security to the instances themselves. So I apply that to an instance and say this can come, this can go to an instance. I would say security groups are a little softer in terms of how they allow access because they're really designed to be stateful. Right? Essentially, they allow everything out, and you get to say what's defined in, and it's done very friendly. Whereas network access control lists are a little more nitty-gritty. If you're a typical firewall person, you'll probably feel a lot more comfortable with network access control lists because you get to go in and apply it to the subnet as a whole. unlike security groups, which are applied to the instances, right? Virtual private gateway is where you have VPN connections into a VPC. So if you want to take, we'll just say your VPC environment with all your different subnets and link it over the internet using an IPsec encrypted tunnel to your firewall at your on-premise business, or maybe you've got another data center or whatever you're bringing into the VPC, you're coming in via private access rather than coming in through the internet gateway where everybody else is coming into. Although, of course, I don't hear what I'm not saying. The VPN connection goes over the internet gateway, but that being said, it is all fully encrypted and private addresses, etc. Elastic Block Store. Elastic Block Store, or EBS, provides permanent EC2 instance storage. Believe it or not, when Amazon first created instances and Amazon Web Services was born, there was no EBS. The only kind of storage that they had was called ephemeral storage. Another term that should be here. See, I build the glossary. That's why hey, it's a living glossary. I chose the right title. Ephemeral storage is essentially storage on the server that as soon as you power down that instance, it's gone. It deletes the instance. That's how Amazon was designed, which is it blows people's mind until they really understand the goal of Amazon is to make sure your instances are disposable. But Amazon realizes everybody's instances are not disposable, so while ephemeral storage is still an option, which is on-server disk usage, they also allow you to have EBS, Elastic Block Store, which is permanent as long as you keep the EBS volume essentially, I want to say active, but essentially as long as you keep it there. You don't delete it, right? It will be there. You're charged on a per gig basis. You can use magnetic storage, you can use solid state disks, and you can use provisioned IOPS on solid state disks, which can give you super high performance for a super high price tag. S3. Durable storage in AWS and supports versioning. Two key things to know about. 11.999999% durability, and the way they achieve that is by replicating your data on multiple devices in multiple data centers, or essentially multiple availability zones, to use Amazon language. Or a data center. So S3 is super high durable storage, and the reason I say supports versioning is something to know, which is essentially when you change a file, it keeps a backup of the old version, an old version, an old version, an old version, and keeps going on multiple backups of that old version. Yes, you pay for that, but that can also be your backup strategy. Seems a little weird to have essentially a backup strategy be on the same disk, essentially. But if you think of the whole design of S3, it's multiple disks anywhere, multiple data centers. It's very rare you're going to find a backup solution that's as reliable as S3 itself. So backing up S3 to S3 using versioning, I would say would be a valid backup strategy. Elastic IP address. Elastic IP address is a static public IP address that you can assign to a running EC2 instance, so that way your public IP address isn't always changing. It is quote-unquote free as long as you have it assigned to an instance. Otherwise, you are going to pay a monthly basis for static IP addresses that you're just sitting on and not using. Well, like I said, it's a brand new idea, and I think it's going to be valuable. If nothing more, as a exam cram review before you go in there, you're like, oh yeah, that's what all those were. But obviously, far more terms than I have breath or time for to record in here. But keep in mind, the terms that I chose are the big ones. These are the ones that you're going to see time and time again, and I just want you to be aware of what those pieces are so they don't throw you off. I hope this has been informative for you. I'd like to thank you for viewing.